Right now, something in your life is broken. Maybe it's a relationship that fell apart without warning. Maybe you lost a job you built your whole identity around. Maybe someone you loved is gone, and the silence they left behind is louder than anything you've ever heard. Or maybe you can't even name it. It just feels like the ground disappeared, like the version of your life you thought was real wasn't. And now you're here at 2 in the morning, or maybe mid-afternoon, pretending to be okay, wondering, how do people survive this? How do I get through this without completely losing myself? Here's what I want you to know before we go any further. You are not weak for being here. You are not broken beyond repair, and you are not the first person to stand exactly where you are right now, feeling like life has taken everything. Over 2,000 years ago, a group of thinkers called the Stoics faced the same thing. And what they built wasn't just philosophy. It was a survival system, one that's been quietly holding people together through grief, war, poverty, failure, and loss for 2 millennia. Stay with me, because by the end of this video, you won't just feel better, you'll think differently about what's happening to you, and that changes everything. Section 1. Introduction to Stoicism. Stoicism was born in ancient Greece around 300 BC, founded by a man named Zeno of Citium. But it was later developed and lived by 3 men whose words still echo through the centuries. Marcus Aurelius, a Roman emperor who ruled one of the most powerful empires in history, yet spent his private nights writing journal entries to himself, struggling with the same self-doubt, grief, and exhaustion that you feel today. His meditations were never meant to be published. They were his personal attempt to stay sane and stay good under impossible pressure. Epictetus, a man who started life as a literal slave. He had no freedom, no property, and at one point, his master broke his leg deliberately, just to prove a point. And yet Epictetus became one of the most powerful philosophical voices in human history, not because life gave him anything, but because he discovered what could never be taken away. Seneca, a writer, statesman, and advisor to emperors who lost everything multiple times: his wealth, his reputation, his freedom, his son. He faced exile, political persecution, and eventually was ordered to take his own life. And through all of it, he wrote with clarity, warmth, and radical honesty about how to live and how to die. These men did not teach philosophy from comfortable lecture halls. They lived it in the blood. And what they discovered is this: suffering is not what destroys people. It is the relationship they have with suffering that either breaks them or builds them. The Stoics made a radical claim that the external world, no matter how chaotic, does not have the power to destroy your inner world without your permission. That no matter what is taken from you, something essential remains, something unconquerable. And today, we're going to unpack what that actually means, and more importantly, how you use it right now. Section 2. The Dichotomy of Control. The first and most foundational principle in all of Stoic philosophy is what Epictetus called the Dichotomy of Control. He opens his most famous work, the Enchiridion, with these exact words: "Some things are in our control and others not. That's it. That's the whole thing. But don't let the simplicity fool you. This idea, if you actually internalize it, will restructure the way you experience suffering." Here's how Epictetus divides the world. Things within your control: your thoughts, your intentions, your judgments and values, your responses to what happens, the effort you choose to make, how you treat other people. Things outside your control: other people's choices, feelings, and actions, your reputation, your body's health, to a large degree, the economy. Whether your relationship survives, whether you get the job, whether the person you love stays. The weather, the timing, the traffic, life. Now here's what the Stoics noticed. Virtually all human suffering comes from treating things outside our control as if they are within it. Think about the last time you felt overwhelmed with anxiety, rage, or despair. What were you focused on? Almost certainly, you were pouring your emotional energy into something you couldn't control. Someone else's behavior, an outcome that hadn't happened yet, a past moment that couldn't be changed. And your nervous system was screaming because some part of you believed that if you just worried hard enough, tried hard enough, replayed the moment enough times, you could make it different. You can't. And the Stoics would say, the suffering isn't coming from the situation. It's coming from the belief that you should be able to control what you can't. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his Meditations, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." This is not passivity. The Stoics were not telling you to roll over and accept abuse. They were not telling you not to try, not to fight, not to grieve. They were pointing to something much more precise, the place where your genuine power actually lives. Here's a practical way to use this right now. Take whatever is tearing you apart, write it down. Then draw a line down the middle of the page. On one side, write everything about this situation that is actually within your control. On the other side, write everything that isn't. Most people find the "within my control" column is shorter than they expected, and almost everything causing them pain is living in the other column. The Stoic practice is not to ignore the right side. It's to stop trying to live in it and redirect every ounce of your energy back to the left. This is how Epictetus, a man who was literally owned by another person, could say with complete honesty that he was free, because his mind was his own. And no one could change that. If you are going through a loss, a failure, a betrayal, ask yourself this every single day. What is this situation asking of me that is actually within my power? And what am I exhausting myself trying to control that I never could? The clarity that comes from honestly answering that question is not a small thing. It is the foundation of every kind of resilience. Section 3. Amor Fati. Love. What is the second principle we need to talk about is one of the most radical ideas in all of philosophy and, in my view, one of the most honest. The Stoics called it Amor Fati, love of fate. Now, I need you to sit with this for a moment, because it's easy to misunderstand. Amor Fati does not mean pretending that bad things are good. It doesn't mean smiling through grief or performing gratitude while your life is collapsing. It doesn't mean toxic positivity. What it means is this: what has happened has happened. Resisting reality doesn't change it. It just adds suffering on top of suffering. Marcus Aurelius, who lost many of his children, who dealt with constant political betrayal, who spent years at war, wrote this: "Accept the things to which fate binds you, and love the people with whom fate brings you together, and do so with all your heart." He wasn't romanticizing his pain. He was refusing to add a second layer of torment on top of the unavoidable first layer. Here's how the Stoics thought about it. When something painful happens, there are actually two separate forms of suffering. The first is the pain itself, the grief, the loss, the fear, the consequence. That's real. That's unavoidable. The second is the suffering we create by arguing with reality. This shouldn't have happened. This isn't fair. I can't believe this. If only I had done something different. This is too much. Why me? That second layer is optional, and for most people, It's where the majority of their suffering actually lives. Amor Fati is the practice of dropping the second layer, not because the pain isn't real, but because adding an argument about reality on top of pain just deepens the wound without healing it. The Stoics would ask you, what if, instead of treating this painful thing as a problem to be solved or a mistake to be corrected, you treated it as the raw material of who you are becoming? What if the loss is real, and it's exactly what your life needed to move you somewhere new? What if the failure is real, and inside it is the very information you needed to eventually succeed? What if the heartbreak is real, and it is teaching you things about yourself that years of comfort never would? This is not a bypass of grief. You are allowed to grieve. You are supposed to grieve. But grief and resistance are different things. A Stoic grieves what is genuinely lost. What they don't do is spend years in war with the fact that it happened. Seneca wrote, "Omnia aliena sunt, tempus tantum nostrum est." Everything else belongs to others. Only time is ours. And Amor Fati is, in a sense, the refusal to waste that time fighting what is already done. Try this. Take the hardest thing you're facing right now, and instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" ask, "What is this happening for?" Not because life is always fair, or because everything happens for a pre-designed reason, but because the question shifts you from victim to builder. It moves you from reaction to response. That is a Stoic move, and it works. Section 4. Memento Mori. Remember death. Now we come to one of the most misunderstood, and I would argue most powerful ideas the Stoics gave us. Memento Mori. Remember that you will die. I know. In a video about hard times, this sounds like exactly what you don't need to hear, but stay with me, because this might be the most compassionate thing the Stoics ever said. The Stoics meditated on death, not because they were morbid, not because they wanted to be depressed, but because they understood something profound. We live most fully when we remember that this moment is finite. Marcus Aurelius wrote about death constantly in his private journal. He reminded himself of the deaths of great emperors before him, of armies and civilizations that had crumbled to dust. He didn't do this to feel hopeless. He did it to feel present. Because when you remember that your time is genuinely limited, that this exact moment, even this painful one, will never come again, something shifts. The petty things stop mattering. The grudges get lighter. The things you've been putting off start to feel urgent. And even the grief, even the real, heavy, devastating grief, becomes something you want to sit inside of fully, rather than rush past. Because it too is part of the limited, irreplaceable fabric of your one life. Here is the Stoic paradox of Memento Mori. Remembering death doesn't make life feel smaller. It makes it feel enormous. Think about the hardest thing you're going through right now, and then ask yourself this question that Marcus Aurelius asked himself. Will this matter in 10 years? Will the people who come after me even know this happened? For some things, the deep losses, the real griefs, the answer is yes. Those deserve your full emotional attention. But for others, the embarrassment, the failure someone else saw, the rejection, the social humiliation, the things that feel catastrophic at 3 a.m., you'll find that the passage of time dissolves them almost completely. Memento Mori is also an antidote to postponement. How many people spend years living as if they have unlimited time, pushing off the apology, delaying the love, waiting to start the thing they actually care about, and then something happens, and suddenly there is no more time. The Stoics practiced imagining that today was their last day, not to be dramatic, but to ask, am I living in alignment with what actually matters to me? When life falls apart, Memento Mori does something unexpected. It makes the broken moment feel significant rather than just unbearable. It reminds you that you are alive, that you are feeling this because you loved something, wanted something, built something real, that your capacity to be hurt is the exact same thing as your capacity to care. And caring is not a weakness. It is the whole point. You are mortal. This moment is real. What you do with it, even in the middle of the wreckage, is genuinely, irreversibly yours. Section 5. The obstacle is the way, one of the most famous Stoic ideas made popular in modern times by writer Ryan Holiday, comes directly from Marcus Aurelius. The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. Most of us experience obstacles as interruptions, as proof that we chose the wrong path, or that fate is working against us, or that we simply don't have what it takes. The Stoics saw obstacles differently. They saw them as the work itself. This isn't just motivational language. It's a fundamentally different relationship with difficulty. And when you understand what the Stoics actually meant, it becomes one of the most practically useful frameworks you can carry through a hard period of life. Here's the core idea. Every obstacle contains within it the seed of what you need to develop to overcome it. The very thing that is blocking you is also training you. And the more you practice treating obstacles as teachers rather than enemies, the more capable you become, not in spite of the difficulty, but because of it. Let's make this concrete. You lost your job. That is a real obstacle, financial, psychological, social. But it also forces you to clarify what you actually want to do with your working life. It strips away the comfortable complacency that kept you in something that might have been slowly killing your sense of purpose anyway. It builds the practical resilience that comes from having to rebuild from zero. None of that undoes the pain, but all of it is real. A relationship ended. You are in grief, but inside that grief is the invitation to finally understand yourself. Outside of that relationship, your patterns, your needs, your capacity for independence, your ability to choose more carefully next time. The heartbreak is the tuition for the growth. And the Stoics would say, you can rage against paying it, or you can decide to learn what it cost you. You failed publicly, people saw. You feel the shame in your body. But public failure has a brutally clarifying power. It shows you who supports you unconditionally. It strips away the performances you are putting on for an audience, and it forces you to find out whether the thing you were building matters enough to you to try again when everyone is watching. Marcus Aurelius governed an empire while dealing with plague, war, betrayal, and the death of multiple children. He did not treat these as interruptions to his life's purpose. He treated them as the arena in which his philosophy had to actually work. That's the Stoic challenge. Not to find a philosophy that sounds good in calm waters, but one that holds when the storm actually hits. And the Stoics would say, the storm is not separate from your life. The storm is your life, asking you what you're made of. Section 6. Practical Stoic exercises for right now. Everything we've talked about so far is philosophy. Now let's talk about practice. Because the Stoics were not academic. They were engineers of the inner life. Everything they wrote was designed to be used in the actual moments of pressure and pain. Here are 5 Stoic exercises you can start right now, tonight, even if your world is falling apart. Exercise 1. The Evening Review. Seneca's practice. Every night, Seneca would ask himself 3 questions before sleep. What did I do wrong today? What did I do right today? What could I have done better? This is not self-punishment. This is calibration. The Stoics believed that a life examined daily, not harshly, but honestly, gradually moves toward wisdom. The person who never reviews their day is condemned to repeat it indefinitely. Tonight, take 5 minutes. Write down those 3 questions. Answer them honestly. Don't spiral into self-criticism. Just observe, as clearly as you can, what the day actually was. Over weeks and months, this practice builds an extraordinary self-awareness. You start to see your own patterns. You catch yourself doing the unhelpful thing before you've fully committed to it. You become, gradually and genuinely, someone who knows themselves. Exercise 2. Negative visualization. Premeditatio malorum. This sounds counterintuitive, but bear with me. The Stoics practiced regularly, imagining losing the things they valued most: their health, their relationships, their work, their freedom. Not to create anxiety, but to dissolve it. Here's why it works. Most anxiety comes from the gap between what we have and the fear of losing it. When you deliberately imagine the loss in a calm, controlled moment, you do 2 things. You reconnect with gratitude for what you still have, and you realize you could survive the loss even if it would be hard. Epictetus told his students to say to themselves when they kissed their children goodnight, "I am kissing a mortal." Not to be morbid, but to feel the full weight of how precious this moment is. Try this. Take something good in your life right now. A friendship, a small comfort, your health. Spend 2 minutes genuinely imagining it gone. Feel the loss. Then open your eyes and look at what you still have. The gratitude that follows is not performance. It is real. Exercise 3. The view from above. Marcus Aurelius repeatedly used a mental exercise in which he zoomed out, imagining himself from great height, looking at his life the way a bird might look at a city. From above, your particular crisis is one of millions happening simultaneously. The thing that feels uniquely catastrophic, when viewed from sufficient distance, becomes a small, human-scale event, one that countless people before you have navigated and survived. This is not a minimizing exercise. It's a proportioning one. When you feel crushed by your situation, try this. Close your eyes. Imagine rising above the room you're in, above your building, above your city, above the continent, and look down at all the millions of people having their own versions of this feeling, right now, at this exact moment. All of them managing, all of them somehow still here. Then come back down to your life and let it feel slightly not smaller, but more survivable. Exercise 4. The Stoic Journal. Marcus Aurelius kept a journal. Seneca wrote thousands of letters. The Stoics believed that writing clarified thinking, and that unclear thinking was the source of most unnecessary suffering. When you're in a hard time, your mind loops. It replays, rehearses, catastrophizes. Writing interrupts that loop. Try this. Every morning, before you do anything else, write for 10 minutes about what is actually happening in your life, what is within your control, and what you are committing to do today. Not how you feel, what you will do. Keep it grounded in action and awareness. Over time, this journal becomes a record of your survival. And survival, when you can look back at it, becomes a source of strength. Exercise 5. Act as if you're being watched by your best self. Epictetus taught his students to imagine that the wisest, most virtuous person they could conceive of was watching everything they did, not to perform for that person, but to use them as a mirror. When you're in pain, it's easy to act in ways you later regret. The cruel message sent in anger, the self-destructive choice made out of despair, the bridge burned because you couldn't bear the weight. Before any significant action in a hard time, ask, would the person I want to be do this? Not the perfect person. Not someone who doesn't feel what you feel. Just the version of you that is doing their best, staying true to their values, choosing the harder right over the easier wrong. That question is not a judgment. It's a compass. Section 7. When the grief is too heavy now, I want to speak directly to something, because some of what we've covered might have felt at moments like it was asking you to feel less than you feel. It isn't. The Stoics were not emotionless. They did not believe in suppressing emotion. They believed in what they called apatheia, which is not apathy in the modern sense, but a kind of emotional freedom, the ability to feel fully without being controlled or destroyed by feeling. Seneca lost his son. He wrote about it with devastating honesty. He did not pretend it didn't hurt. He wrote, "I have lost him, but I had him." That sentence holds the whole Stoic philosophy of grief in 6 words. You are allowed to grieve. You are allowed to cry, to rage, to fall apart in the privacy of your own experience. You are allowed to feel the weight of what you've lost without immediately trying to reframe it, or find the lesson, or make yourself feel better. Grief is not an obstacle to healing. It is the healing. The Stoics understood that avoiding feeling was the thing that kept pain alive indefinitely. The people who truly move through loss are the ones who move through it, not around it. What Stoicism offers in grief is not suppression, it's structure. When the feeling is at its most overwhelming, you have the dichotomy of control to remind you where your power lives. You have Amor, Fati to help you stop fighting what already is. You have Memento, Mori to help you feel the precious, irreplaceable weight of your own life. These are not shields from feeling. They are handholds on the way down and on the way back up. If you are in genuine crisis right now, if the grief is so heavy that you are struggling to function, struggling to see forward, struggling to want to be here at all, please reach out to someone, a friend, a therapist, a crisis line. The Stoics valued community. Seneca wrote thousands of letters, not to lecture, but to connect. You are not meant to endure everything alone, and asking for help is one of the most rational, most courageous things a human being can do. Section 8. Rebuilding after the fall. There comes a point, and it will come, even if right now you can't imagine it, when the acute phase of a hard time begins to shift, when the shock gives way to something more navigable, when you start, slowly and unevenly, to put things back together. The Stoics had a lot to say about that phase too. Epictetus said, "It is not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." But the Stoics went further than just reactive resilience. They believed that the hardest times, if met with philosophical awareness, did not just restore you to who you were before they transformed you into someone larger. This is not a cliché. It's a specific mechanism. When life falls apart, it strips away illusions. The illusion that you were in control. The illusion that things were guaranteed. The illusion that you knew who you were when everything was comfortable. What's left underneath is something closer to the truth of you. And the Stoics argued that the person who rebuilds from that stripped-down truth builds something more genuine, more durable, and more free than the person who never had to rebuild at all. Here's what the Stoic rebuilding process looks like in practice. First, identify your values, not your circumstances. When life falls apart, you lose the external structures you'd built your identity on. Stoicism asks, who are you when those structures are gone? What do you actually value? Not what you were told to value, not what was convenient to value, but what, when everything else is stripped away, still matters to you. Second, recommit to what you control, not the outcome. Not whether people respect you again or whether things go the way you hope. Commit to the quality of your effort, the integrity of your character, and the honesty of your engagement, regardless of results. Third, let the failure inform, not define. Marcus Aurelius failed. Seneca failed. Epictetus had everything taken from him. None of them treated those failures as the final word on who they were. They treated them as data, painful, useful, clarifying data, and they kept moving. Fourth, help someone. This sounds simple, but it is one of the most powerful things a person in a hard time can do. Seneca wrote that the fastest way to feel less alone in your suffering is to turn towards someone else's suffering and offer what little you have. It breaks the self-referential loop of pain. It reminds you of your own capacity, and it builds the sense of purpose that hard times tend to strip away. Fifth, be patient with the pace. The Stoics had no illusions about change being instant. Marcus Aurelius wrote his private reflections for over a decade. Seneca wrote about the same struggles year after year. Growth is not a single moment. It is a practice uneven, imperfect, ongoing. The point is not to become someone who never suffers. The point is to become someone who knows how to carry suffering without becoming it. Section 9. Closing. What the Stoics want you to know. We've covered a lot of ground today. The dichotomy of control, where your real power lives and where most suffering is hiding. Amor, Fati. The choice to stop fighting what has already happened and to use it. Memento, Mori. How the awareness of death makes life more alive, even now. The obstacle is the way. How the thing that's blocking you might be building you. Practical exercises, not just ideas, but daily tools. The permission to grieve fully, without performance, and the path of rebuilding, not back to who you were, but forward to who you're becoming. I want to close with something Marcus Aurelius wrote to himself on a night when things were hard. Not a polished speech for the public, just an honest line from a man trying to keep going. You have survived everything the universe has put in your path so far. 100% of your hardest days, you have made it through. Not perfectly, not without scars, but through. He didn't write that to feel invincible. He wrote it to remember that he was still here, that survival itself is evidence, that the fact you're still searching for a way forward means something hasn't broken the thing in you that matters most. You are here. You are still asking the question. You are still in some fundamental way trying. The Stoics would say, that's enough. That's actually everything. Hard times are not a detour from your life. They are part of it, woven in, inescapable, and ultimately, if you let them, generative. And you reading this, watching this, looking for something to hold on to you, are not lost. You are exactly where the work is. If this helped you, share it with someone who needs it. Subscribe for more philosophy that actually holds up when life gets hard. See you in the next one.